There we go. Okay, I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Dr. Bronwyn Bailey-Charteris. Welcome to this salon. It's so wonderful to have you all here. This salon's been arranged with Professor Deborah Lupton, my wonderful colleague, and my other wonderful colleague, Dr. Anastasia Murney, as well. And we have our very special guest, Tessa Zettel, which is going to be wonderful to hear from and hear all about your work, Tessa. I'm such a big fan, so I'm very excited that we get to hear more in depth about your work today. But of course, I want to start by saying Warami Bijiga, which means hello friends in Darug. And I wish to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from Aboriginal land, that is Darug land and also Gundungurra people's land here in Gulumada, or the Blue Mountains. And I'd really like to pay my respects to elders past and present and recognise their continuing care of country, water, sky and community. And I also want to pay my deepest respects to all First Nations people, especially any folks who might be joining us today. If people would like to share what country you're joining us from, please do in the chat as well. I'll hand over to Annie and Tessa in just a moment, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview of where this lab series has come from. So the Vitalities Lab is presenting this new salon. This is just our second one, and it's really about sharing these kind of arts-led creative research in the more than human worlds that we inhabit. And, you know, we're really trying to imagine this salon as not just a kind of human encounter, but as a way to engage the more than human, the elemental, the ecological, the invisible. And so the gathering is a space for this kind of lively exchange. Hopefully we're learning and being able to share as well in the question time and in the comments. And we're really trying to kind of understand what happens when we encounter the human and non-human together. And yeah, we have a series of special guests. As I said, Tessa Zettel is our very special guest today. Annie Murney, my partner in crime, will also be sharing some of her wonderful work too. So I'll pass over to you now. But yeah, welcome. Wonderful to have you all here.
Thanks very much, Bronwyn, for that introduction. So what I will do now is briefly introduce the session, and then I'll also introduce Tessa, who is going to speak a bit about her work as part of Cloudship Press. So in terms of coming up with the theme for our second salon, I am quite interested in artists who have been turning to magical practices and techniques and why this might be happening at the current juncture. So, I mean, I guess like one hypothesis that I have is that, you know, this kind of prospect of civilizational breakdown due to anthropogenic climate change is driving this hunger for, you know, new and old and overlooked knowledges and tools. So I work with tarot cards, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But I've also become quite interested in other artists who are also working with cards, so designing their own decks and who are thinking about similar questions, right? So how to make sense of the world, what are the limits of rational knowledge-making systems, and what is the kind of social and world-making force of reading cards with other people? So what is their function? Are they maps? Are they recipes? Are they balms? Are they provocations or warnings? So yeah, these are some of the things I hope we can reflect on and tease out in this session. So Tessa has very kindly agreed to share this panel with me, and Tessa is speaking on behalf of Cloudship Press, a micro publisher that she runs with Susie Nelson. And so Cloudship Press create these very beautiful, slow, handcrafted materials that are attentive to multi-species flourishing. But Tessa is also an artist, a writer, a researcher, so she's working across multiple disciplines, imaging and enacting potential worlds. So she's collaborated with a whole range of people, always attending to these more than human cultural relations and knowledges. And so sometimes these are all about kind of bringing everyday practices together, like foraging, fermenting and composting, into these experimental forms. So Tessa is a co-director of Frontyard Projects in Marrickville, the Weathering Collective, together with Astrida Nymanis and Jennifer Hamilton, and also the T. Rudzinskaite Memorial Amateur Lichenologist Society, as well as we mentioned, Cloudship Press. So what I might do now is hand over to you, Tessa. So Tessa's going to talk for a bit, I'm going to talk for a bit, and then we'll have an open conversation. But feel free to take it away, Tessa.
Thank you. Thanks, Annie. Thanks, Bronwyn. It's lovely to reconnect with some of you. I see also Heather, another co-director of Frontyard Projects, as is Annie in the audience there. So hello. Yeah, it's I'm very happy to be here. From saying when at the beginning, before some of you have come in, that I'm actually in the Warrumbungles right now, which is meeting point of Wiradjuri, Kamilaroi and Walwan country. And I'm here. I might just talk briefly about why I'm here as well, because it's kind of related. It's the kind of closing phase of a research retreat that I've been doing in Armidale with Astrida Nymanis and Jennifer Hamilton as the Weathering Collective. So we've been working for about 10 years on various kinds of collective experiments around, well, weather, but embodied understandings of climate change. And this particular gathering has brought together about 10 people working sort of loosely in the areas of climate justice and weather, and kind of grouped around an exhibition that is opening tomorrow, actually, at the New England Regional Art Museum. So the exhibition is called How to Weather Together, Feminist Practice for Climate Change, and that's also part of a book that Astrida and Jen and I have been working on for the last few years. They have co-written it, and then I've done illustrations and kind of visualizations of specific exercises or practices that we've developed over the years. And then from that process, we've made so some of the work that I've done is in the book, and then it's been collected. That part has been collected together as an artist book that we printed at Bad Press, formerly Big Fag Press in Sydney. It's kind of collective, and I have some of them here, so it's quite exciting because we only just kind of got them. And then some of these I've watercolored by hand, and they're in the exhibition. But just because it's so exciting, I can show you. So I don't know how much you can see, but there's kind of drawings here on that side. In this, they did this very fancy 2-color gradient print, and then so there's 10 of these. Each one begins with the kind of instructions for how you might carry out the exercise, and then there's a sort of spread which is a bit more pictorial and relates to what to do. So there's like a stack of them. They come in a little handmade ridiculous glassine envelope that then has been printed in someone's little home printer, and yeah, so that's kind of an aside. But yeah, so we're here in the Warrumbungles looking at the Dark Sky Park and the Siding Spring Observatory, and had some very interesting conversations with people here around space weather and around the politics of our relations with what's around us and what sustains us, which can be very, very small, as in the work that I do with the Lichenology Society, or can be very, very big. And one of the first things we did in this retreat in Armidale was we were taken out to this amazing bush block where this group of Indigenous people there have bought this land and didn't go through any kinds of like structural land council procedures, or like didn't engage with the politics, and somehow have created this amazing resource that people can use to learn on country and do all sorts of kind of educational cultural activities. And this Uncle Steve, who took us out there, one of the first things he said was everything is connected. the plants, the animals, the stars, the wind. And it was just such a beautiful bringing together of, you know, it seems so basic, but if we actually lived in the world as if these things were completely connected, and ourselves as well, I think things would be quite different. So also the reason that it's relevant is that so the cards, the compost cards that Susie and I designed, they are featured in the exhibition, and this is the first time actually that it's been shown in like any sort of public context, because Susie, who I made these with, she had a baby, and so we didn't kind of get to the point of launching it as yet. So we kind of published it in 2023, in that we finished the first few ones, and yeah, so I can just sort of show you. So they have these, well, the boxes are made by hand, and then they're covered by hand in this sort of handmade paper. And then I do, so there are two sets. There's the dark and the light. I think Annie has the light there. But basically the dark ones, which have little compost microbes, you can kind of see in the gold that we've drawn, and then that's been put as a separate layer. And then the edging I do by hand with gold, is gold Japanese ink. And then on Annie's set, which were the light ones, I kind of draw an approximation of those microbes with the gold ink. So we basically, Susie had done these paintings. They were on white, so the white set is more accurate to the originals. This was quite some years ago, and she was making a compost while she was living in Berlin, and for some reason she decided to record her compost every day following the moon cycle. And so she recorded what she put into the compost. She made a painting of what she was putting in, and she took notes on various other things like how she was feeling, or some random things that she did that day, as well as collecting together a kind of internet archive of moon planting information. So, you know, you can garden according to the moon based on various instructions. And then she had come back to Sydney. She wasn't living there anymore, and I saw these paintings and I thought, they're so beautiful, we should turn them into a book. But we had previous to that made our first publication called Making Time, which was a kind of hand Riso printed, cut, hand sewn, very laborious endeavor, and it almost killed us. So we, you know, had gone from that to doing the next one, which was a folding book, which was also extremely complicated and time consuming. And so for this one we were like, maybe we should just make cards. You know, but obviously we found a way to make that very slow as well. But it kind of worked, because it meant that so, you know, we had this collection of paintings, and then I decided to follow the same moon phase kind of period, so the same 28 days. And then on each day I looked at the painting that she had done for that day, and then I made a poem that at some point in the day before I went to sleep, that composted together what I saw in the picture, some of her notes, maybe what I'd done that day, and then also incorporating like the ingredients of the compost and some bits and pieces around sort of moon advice you might have for that time. So we've got 28 different cards that have the painting on either the dark or the light background, because we couldn't decide, so we thought we'd do a set of both. And then on the other side it's got the poem and Babylonian number system that we discovered, and it's got also a kind of iconography of exactly where that fits in the cycle. So the line that goes up or down depending on if it's waning or waxing, and then the actual shape. And then to help you find your way through that, we also made these index cards. So one line from the poem is kind of taken out as a sort of title, and then you've got like where it fits in the number system, and then the symbol for where it is in the cycle, and then also the ingredients of the compost. And then, yeah, there's, I guess, in addition, there's 32 cards in total. So there's 28 of those, 2 index cards, introduction. So it's just a school group is arriving. So it might be slightly noisy. Anyway, that's the outline. Yeah, I thought we could also pull some cards and read some poems randomly.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's quite new. I mean, it's new and old. It's new in that it's still kind of emerging into the world, and we didn't really have any prescription for how it might be used. Like, you could technically say, oh, okay, today's the full moon, let's look at the full moon card and see what it might offer. You could also just pull a card from the image side and see what is being offered to you. Basically, we met every day at Frontyard, every Wednesday, for like 2 years, making this thing. And my dad had a studio kind of around the corner and used to often drop into us, and he would be like, what are you doing? Like, what are you making? What are people going to do with this? And me and Susie would just say, I don't know, we're just going to finish this thing. Like, got some idea of a visual of what it might be, and then what happens, how people choose to use it as a tool or as a deconstructed poetry book or whatever is kind of open. Hopefully that was clear enough.
Great, thank you. Should I do my bit and then we should pull some cards?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, okay, all right. No, thanks so much, Tessa. There's so much to think about there, and I'm looking forward to chatting more about it. So I'm gonna try to move through my bit quickly. I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. All right, so you can see my slides. Yes? Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about an art project I'm developing for next year's Cementa Festival, which is in Candos on Davey Wiradjuri land in New South Wales. So it's about 3 hours west of Sydney, and it's kind of nestled up against the Wollamai National Park. So I'm just going to introduce the festival briefly, and then I'll kind of talk a bit about my practice. But the core themes of the festival, if you're not familiar with it, are informed by the history of the town of Candos. So Candos was founded as a company town in 1913 with the establishment of the cement plant there. So it was basically responsible for providing cement for large-scale infrastructure projects in New South Wales. But in 2011, it was announced that the cement plant would be closing down because it was no longer efficient or financially viable. So that happened, and then a few years later, in 2014, the Willerowang power station, so the coal-fired power station, shut down. So that was also close to the town of Candos. So these were 2 big employers for the town that shut down. So, there was this subsequent process of depopulation and, economic depression, which is not unique to Candos, but Candos is this really kind of potent metaphor of what happens after extractive industries. What is the sort of fate of the town? So, this has kind of inspired the festival to think about community engaged art and explore these questions of social and cultural adaptation in the wake of post-industrialization. So, what does renewal and regeneration look like, and how can art contribute to that process? So for my practice, I use the medium of tarot cards, which is also another way of saying I use the medium of conversation as a method of storytelling. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about where I'm at with this project. So making this project in Candos, in dialogue with Candos. But I'll firstly just give a quite tight overview of how I started using tarot cards and what my approach is there. So I mean, very briefly, if people are not familiar with tarot or would like a refresher, it's a practice using playing cards for entertainment or divination. I mean, it did originate as a secular card game. It's only really in the 18th and 19th centuries that it acquired its more occultist dimensions that we would probably recognize today. And while tarot has a set structure, there are also, lots of different decks, lots of oracle cards as well, which are a little bit kind of more flexible, which circulate in a range of different cultural contexts. But I mean, when I'm thinking about tarot, I often think about tarot as quite a promiscuous knowledge system. So it kind of pulls in lots of different things. There are very many decks that are sort of hybridized. There's endless interpretations. So it's quite porous in that way. I mean, what I have on the slide here is a card from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which was conceived in 1909. So it's probably the most famous tarot deck. But it's kind of indicative of the structure of a tarot deck, because you've got the major arcana cards, which are your trump cards, so your high priestess, your fool, the chariot, and so on. And then you've got your 56 minor cards, which are divided into 4 suits. So you've got cups, swords, wands, and pentacles. And each of those suits is paired with a natural element. So cups is water, swords is air, wands is fire, and pentacles is earth. And so this is not too complicated, but in each suit it's numbered 1 to 10. So it's like a little story, right? So it's a journey. So 1 is starting off on the journey and 10 is its completion. So when you do a tarot reading, you're kind of mixing these stories together to create something new and specific to the problem that you're investigating. So I kind of preface, this discussion of the Rider-Waite-Smith because a lot of modern tarot decks are based on it. So it's incredibly influential. But yeah, I guess, sorry, embarrassing photo of me there, but so I kind of like to read tarot in collaboration with other people, which is probably a little bit unusual. I mean, if you pay for a tarot reading, it will likely be a one-on-one service, right? Where you have a reader and a querent, right? So the querent or the questioner is the person who comes to the reader with a problem for which they are seeking guidance. And so the reader will then lay out a spread of cards, and the position of each card corresponds to a different factor, right? So it might be the past, the present, the environment that you're in, what is it that's underpinning the problem at hand. So you're reading the cards according to these different kind of spatial, temporal, psychological positions. And so while the cards themselves do have meanings in a broad sense of the word, those meanings are not fixed. So when you do a reading, you're always kind of negotiating and configuring the meanings of the cards, depending on where they are in the spread, as well as the question that is ultimately driving the reading. So for this project, which was at ACCA earlier in the year, was curated by Bronwyn. So we collectively developed a question, which was, how can we move with/through grief in order to unlock the imagination in service of regenerative futures? And then, so you can't quite see it in the photo, but we had this kind of mapping, so annotating our conversation as we were uncovering the cards one at a time. So there's this kind of process of layering or texturing that happens as the story unfolds. But I guess also to say, in terms of my approach, I am often using tarot in relation to climate change or climate anxiety, not exclusively, but often that's what I am thinking about. And I guess there are a few reasons for this. And the first one, which also goes to this sort of expanded performative format of tarot reading that I'm using. So I feel like the collective interpretive labor of a tarot reading contributes something that often feels lacking in our current responses to climate change or really kind of complex political problems. And And that is a social context or forum for actually sorting through all of the information and all of the knowledges that we're receiving on a daily basis. So it sort of feels like, we're inputting a lot of stuff, but we're not actually working out how to use that or working out how to translate it into our everyday lives. So the second thing is that I find the symbolic language of the tarot offers a way to recast the problem. So to step back from these conventional methods of problem solving or these quite well-worn vocabularies that can sometimes produce ruts and dead ends. It's like kind of saying the same words over and over again and expecting different results. So maybe we actually need to experiment with different languages, and that might open up different ways of thinking. So the third thing is that tarot is about making relations, right? Like it's about experimenting with new connections, with new patterns and logics. And so, yes, a tarot reading can be therapeutic, but it can also be deeply unsettling, right? Like it can be uncomfortable. It can be really challenging. So it's all about kind of rewiring the relationship between what we know, what we feel, and our capacity to act. And then the last thing is I often think about tarot as a way of thinking across different scales while retaining firm anchors in the present, right? So with a tarot reading, you can think about the future, the past, what might be happening in a different part of the world, what might be happening in your background, in your backyard. So you have the capacity to think across time and space, but it is very much grounded in one place, right? In the situation and the problem that you are investigating. So I actually started using tarot in the classroom with my students. So I used to teach this course called Art and the Anthropocene, so from 2020 to 2024. And I guess like the two big components of this course were, the first one is that we would talk a lot about aesthetic strategies for visualizing climate change. So we would kind of talk about these artworks that are produced on a monumental scale or artworks that are really trying to get down to the microscopic. So things that are naked to the human eye. We spoke about these like quite oculocentric responses to climate change. So this supremacy of vision as a way of knowing the world and how we might be able to engage other senses. So such as, taste, smell, touch, and so on. But the second component of the course was about the imagination and how we can stimulate the imagination. So looking at things like speculative fiction, like counterfuturing, Afrofuturism, First Nations futurism, in order to try to have more agency over the future and to think about time in different ways as well. So I used to do this lecture called Magic as an Irrational Science, where I kind of spoke about this resurgence of magical practices in contemporary art. And I made this argument that, if we think about irrational sciences, maybe that's about forming connections about the world in unexpected ways. So it could be a way of making knowledge claims through the body rather than the mind, or undoing the dualism between mind and body. But I was also thinking about this in response to a sense of malaise within our culture of information and the way in which information is produced and disseminated, which I kind of alluded to a bit before. And yeah, as I said in the introduction, I think there is this appetite for, new/old knowledges to describe and intervene in what is happening to us. So I suppose given I started reading tarot in the classroom, my practice is very informed by the pedagogical. I mean, to me, a good collective tarot reading mirrors the collaborative and discursive environment of like a really good tutorial conversation. So it kind of unfolds through this process of synthesis, so uncovering one card at a time, and we start with visual analysis and then start to build in more narrative complexity. And in terms of my role, I act as a guide, as the reader, but I also try not to exert too much control. So I do want to allow space for different interpretations and, different experiments in terms of forming these patterns. So, ultimately we are all coming together around a shared problem and trying to figure out a way to move through it, which is not necessarily to nail down an answer or a solution, but to kind of figure out how to move through it. So I want to take a brief moment just to, I guess, unpack this idea of magic and flag some potential risks. Because, we could see tarot within this larger context of magic. And I would say even the term magic is itself like a simplification. It's something that encompasses a vast range of complex and sometimes conflicting practices. But, we can see magic as a direction of the will, a sensitivity to the more than human, and the co-production of strange realities. But something I'm a little bit cautious about are these kind of excitable pronouncements of a re-enchantment in art. And the risk of this, I think, is that, it can actually erase or just not pay sufficient recognition to the cultures and the people that have been sustaining and nurturing magical practices over a very long period of time, right? So it can actually underestimate the labor of really committing to magical practices. So in terms of, the newness of magic, I think that's the risk is just picking it up as this aesthetic costume that can be tried on. So that's, I think, something that, we as artists, or as I'm kind of thinking about being cautious of. But the other risk, I think, is assuming that magical practices are already inscribed with a set of political values that mirror your own, which they're not, right? So there can be this tendency, I think, in some Marxist and feminist inflected scholarship to simply slot magical figures and practices into their own preset ideological formulas. I guess a classic example of this would be the figure of the witch, right? So this reclaiming of the witch as this, I guess, two-dimensional icon of feminist rebellion. And look, I'm not, I think absolutely the witch can play that role, and witches can and have mounted, powerful challenges to hegemonic forces. But, I'm cautious of this flattening effect, right? This tendency to instrumentalize magical knowledges to serve your own purposes, right? But with all of that said, right, I think there is something that is happening at the present moment that is driving this interest in, magic, or what I would also call the arts of healing. So things like tarot, astrology, and so on. So I'm going to move into talking about my project now, so about Samenta. And this is the project I pitched. So I'm interested in how regional communities such as Kandos are at the forefront of these environmental disasters such as bushfires, floods and droughts. And I want to know about the knowledges and experiences of regional communities, right? Which those of us who live in cities behind the sandstone curtain, so to speak, are relatively insulated from and ignorant of, I would add. So my goal is to produce a socially engaged art project that uses tarot as a method of working through this kind of messiness of living in an era of escalating climate crises. So I hope it will produce a large-scale participatory tarot reading for the festival, and this will be in response to a question that is formulated in collaboration with local people over the course of 12 months. So how the festival works is you do a residency. So over a period of time, you spend time talking to people and working with people in the town. But the other thing is, and you can see this a little bit on the slide, but a component of this is this real like sprawling collective note-taking. So I also think of tarot as a form of cartography, right? So of map making. So making these maps for navigating the future. So I've been introduced to the local tarot reader whose name is Pascal, and Pascal Osance is a local reader living in Ralston, which is the neighbouring town, so Candos, Ralston are very close together. But she has a very interesting method of fusing colour therapy with tarot reading, which I've not encountered before. But she uses a deck of cards that she has coloured in with her own customised colour palette. And so I've been kind of, learning a bit more about her practice and the way that she works, and especially the relationship between colour, the environment, and our emotional and psychological states. So I took these other photos when I was in Candos in September. So I was really struck by, the overflow of wattle. So there was so much wattle around the kind of Midwest when I was there, and how bright and vibrant it was. But I was also really captivated by, the hot pink of this poison tree stump against the kind of moss green of the fence. So, this was the first time I had a reading with Pascal, and I found I was really alert to thinking about colour at that time. Of course, it being spring as well. But in learning a bit more about Pascal's practice, I'm not yet sure how it will inform what I do for the festival next year. But it also has made me think a little bit more about how I conduct tarot, which, yes, is in response to, social, political, environmental problems, but is probably less receptive to, the more immediate surroundings, right? Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk about, which is I was actually in Candos last week, and I managed to do some workshops in the local high school with students. And I spoke to the students about this poster by Ian Millis. So it was produced for the first ever Cementa Festival in 2013. And basically, it's like a little speculative fiction for Candos. So it celebrates Candos's solar thermal power station, which is the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. There are these kind of locally made plywood bicycles. There's a botanical garden blossoming in the defunct cement works. And then there's a Candos University with its flagship School of Cultural Adaptation, training future leaders to fight against climate disasters. So the Candos School of Cultural Adaptation became a real artist collective that continues to work and contribute to the Cementa Festival. But I do think of this poster as like the manifesto for the festival, right? Like it's this provocative reimagining of the Candos that might be reborn from its post-industrial state. So yeah, I asked the students for their responses to this vision, and then I asked them to come up with their own predictions for what Candos will look like in 50 years. And their responses were mostly quite bleak. So, saying it'll be a ghost town, there'll be nothing here, everyone will leave, it will be full of old people, and this is my favourite response, it will be full of meth heads and we'll have a Macca's. And then there is this other response which says, so it'll either be gone or a massive farm with a recycling plant in the middle of nowhere. So this last one is actually a response to a very recent proposal to transform the defunct cement works into a waste to gas facility. So it'll be converting waste into methanol and liquid carbon dioxide. So this was announced like a month ago, so it is quite fresh, and I guess lots of kind of mixed and skeptical reactions when I was in town just last week. So the project would create 300 jobs, or about 300 jobs, and there's a community consultation process that will happen in December. So in terms of some of this skepticism, there have been recent development projects that have not consulted with the community. So for instance, Bowden's silver mine, or as the locals call it, Bowden's lead mine, is going ahead after this lengthy process of contestation and resistance from local people because it is 2 kilometres from the village of Loo, and people are quite scared about lead contamination, so the environmental risks and the safety of residents. So, you know, the students are kind of very much aware of these things and they're engaging with them, but at the same time, you know, they know there are no jobs in Kandos and they don't really see a future for themselves in Kandos for the most part. But I then asked the students to write a question about the future, so something they want more of or less of, or how to deal with potential challenges. So there were a range of different responses, so from, you know, how can we stop cutting down trees, to how can we restore our faith in humanity, to, you know, will the sports channels still be free in the future? So then we kind of embarked on this process of storytelling, so using the tarot. I mean, this is a deck I've used a few times, and it's called Next World Tarot by Christy C. Rhodes. So it has these a little bit more, these more kind of youthful contemporary archetypes, which I find are a little bit more like younger people, like kids are a bit more receptive to. So, you know, I did this with 2 groups, and, you know, one group was quite conscious of environmental issues, so kind of thinking about the overconsumption of resources, and, you know, we kind of talked about what happens when there are no resources left after we've spent them all. But the other group was very fixated on money, right? And they just really wanted to know, okay, how can we get a lot of money? And, you know, how can we have enough money to have a nice life? But we also got into this idea of, you know, whether you need a lot of money to have a nice life or not. So this is kind of where I'm at the moment. And, you know, I hope to continue this process of collecting questions. So not just from students, but also from local people in Kandos. I am also thinking about the tarot deck that I want to use. Originally, I was thinking I would make a deck, like a Kandos Arcana, that kind of draws on local iconographies from the town, which I may still do, I'm not sure. But I am also interested in modifying or hacking the Rider-Waite-Smith, which is the deck I use the most. So, of course, you know, there is this anthropocentrism and Eurocentrism in this particular deck. So I'm constantly thinking about how to negotiate that, or how to kind of manage those tensions, or whether those tensions are untenable. One current idea I have is to cut out all of the objects, so all of the tools, the wands, the cups, the swords, the pentacles. And part of the reason for that is thinking from the perspective of lack, right? So lacking resources. I guess also thinking about the conversation with the students last week, you know, what happens when we don't have any more resources, or how do we, you know, conceptualize what a resource is. But also the other thing I'm wanting to do is make the cards more transparent. So to actually kind of see through them, to see the ground, to see the environment. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm up to. So I might stop talking now, but I think, you know, we have a good 40 minutes for conversation, which is nice. So yeah. Do you want to maybe facilitate the Q&A, Bron? Or yeah?
I have a question.
Oh, yep. Deborah.
I have several questions, but I'll start just building on yours, only just because you've just finished. So as someone who is a tarot naive person, I've never seen a reading. I don't know how it works. I've obviously seen examples of cards here and there, you know, it's part of popular culture. Could you just step us through exactly how you don't have to step us through how a practitioner does a reading necessarily, but what I'd really love to hear about is how you do a reading, as you know, in the way that you've described, like going back to first principles, sort of your process. Say the one you did at the down in Melbourne with ACCA.
Yeah.
You know, because I still haven't quite grasped exactly how you do it. And
sure.
I'd love to learn more exactly. And I love that photo. It looked like someone in a drama class or something.
I know.
It's very expressive and dramatic.
It is. It's very extra, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extra. It's special.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, absolutely. I mean, the way I start is by collectively formulating the question. So, for instance, for this exhibition, I actually did two sessions, but there were about 10 people present. So basically, I asked people to, just talk to the person next to them about a question. So something they wanted to know. I mean, this was also within the framework of the exhibition. So relational ecology. So, it was very much about climate and futuring. So once people kind of had a bit of a chat, we shared our ideas, and then basically I kind of synthesized a question. So I find often we're able to find some common ground. Sometimes I might kind of stitch two bits of a question together to make something that, makes more sense. So I guess, for instance, this question, people were talking about grief, and then somebody else was talking about intergenerational responsibility. So that's kind of how we came up with, okay, how can we move with/through grief in service of regenerative futures? So that is the first step, I think. And that's also people investing in the reading. So saying, okay, well, this is what I want to know. And then we go from there. But, I'll also shuffle the cards and lay the spread. This is a spread. Actually, no, I did actually modify this spread a bit. So it was kind of a custom spread for this particular event. But it's partly informed by what's called a Celtic cross spread, which is like a 10-card spread. But in the center, and as I said before, each card corresponds to a particular position. But in the center with the cross, you've got the situation card and then the crossing card, which is the problem. And then as you go out, you get other things like past, future, hopes and fears, possible solution, etc. So I also like to uncover cards one at a time. So we start, which also helps to really just slow the pace of the conversation. And then you get these kind of nice moments of folding back when you draw another card, and it's like, oh, wow, this actually complicates what we said over here. But it always starts with a visual analysis, right? So people just talking about what they see, what are their kind of emotional responses or their intuitive responses? Does it remind them of something? So we just kind of gradually build it up from there. I mean, I also kind of supplement the conversation by saying, okay, well, when we're talking about wands, we're also talking about fire, right? So there are these this kind of background tarot knowledge that I will bring to it, but I also try to keep it open enough so I'm not, basically eliminating people's interpretations that they come to it with. So yeah, that's kind of how it unfolds until we get to the end, and then we do a bit of a process of summing up. And I mean, sometimes, and I would say I'm still thinking about a good way to close a tarot reading, because sometimes it can just trickle off. And one method I've used is just getting people to share a word, a keyword, or a phrase that has come up for them that they'll take away. But yeah, that's basically how I read. But readers are so different. Like when I go to tarot readers, they can be like super intuitive, like they won't really, step through each card or explain what each card is. Other readers like Pascal with this sort of color therapy, yeah, also so different. So yeah, my experience is that there are so many different ways to read tarot, I think. Does that make sense, Deborah?
Yeah, it does. I'm just going to ask just one more really simplistic question. So it's the normal way you've got your deck of cards, whatever deck you've decided to use. You shuffle them. That's always part of it.
Yes.
Making sure they're random.
Yes.
You draw from the top.
Yeah, I mean, there are different methods here as well. Like sometimes it's you split the deck in half and, you draw with your left hand. Like there are kind of various protocols.
All right.
I mean, some people are more adherent to it than others, but yeah.
Okay. So there's various ways of drawing, and then as you've explained, there's various ways of and covering the cards and laying out the cards or the number of cards people might use from what you just... Okay, good. That helps me understand the process. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. I'll give you a reading sometime, Deborah.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, great.
Let's do it.
Thanks for that first question, Deborah. I'm going to ask people if they would like to turn their mics on. You're welcome to just jump in. I think we're a nice small group. You're also welcome to write something in the chat if you prefer. But I might kick us off with a question for you, Tessa. I was wondering about, I loved the way you were talking about this kind of composting together and how the ingredients are kind of composted together. And I was wondering if your new card deck, if that relates to some of your composting work that you've done previously, or how you see the card as kind of a method or a model for this kind of collaborative practice that's so essential, from my understanding, to your ongoing body of work.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So I've done some work over the years as part of a group called Collective Disaster, which is a kind of landscape architecture, public art, amorphous body of people, and we've done a lot of compost related projects, like we've built composting toilets and large composting heating like a pool in a hot spring sort of thing in a park in France. And then I've done, on the other hand, through Weathering Collective stuff and kind of being involved with Jennifer and Estrida, the Composting Feminisms Environmental Humanities Reading Group, which happened over many years. And I think my work with that process made me think about composting differently. And I suppose they use composting as a metaphor, and digestion. And I guess at Frontyard we're also doing collective, real composting, not necessarily always successfully, but yeah, in the cards thing, it just made, the compost sort of started the project, so it kind of just made sense to follow through that logic. And so we called the deck The Alchemy of Compost Moon Planting Guide Transmutation Cards. And we really were thinking about compost, the process of compost, as a kind of alchemical way of integrating whatever's there, whatever kind of muck you're dealing with, and fully facing it and incorporating it and digesting it and transforming it into something else together through the process. So yeah, not kind of picking and choosing from what's even seems interesting or as opposed to being mundane. There's a lot of stuff in here that's, it's just whatever was there. And experiment, like the stuff that I do with Susie, is a little bit different to some of my other artistic practices, or because they're less about interacting with a location or a kind of community in terms of the production. I'm not really an artist who usually does studio work, and then put stuff out there. It's more made in conversation with a particular context. And in a way like this, our ongoing collaboration over the years is a kind of context in which something like this emerges. It very slowly, usually over many, many years. And then once it's done, it can form part of other conversations or other situations.
Yeah, I love that kind of, the compost is both the kind of social metaphor and physical embodied actual materiality there. And I think it's lovely that you've made this card set that's going to be able to go off and have its own journey kind of without you. But then there'll be, as composting does, there'll be kind of remnants of things, there'll be things that return. Yeah, I think it's lovely you're working on those different scales. Heather has their hand up. Heather, do you want to do it? Oh, sorry, Tessa, you go. One.
I wanted to add as well that I think, Annie, you've also maybe done some stuff with Jen of the Weathering Collective in relation to the tarot, but just want to mention that so as part of the the exhibition, we also had a market stall, which is one of the practices that we've looked at, holding a market stall. And in the stall, Jen that has now integrated into what she's running there, called the Community Operated Weathering Station, COWS, and she has a tarot reader just as part of that process. So people come and talk about climate change and whatever kinds of activities might be offered. We had also Babacar, another Frontyard director, up there doing a little workshop around resting, and they can also get a tarot reading from a very interesting anthropologist based in Armidale who does these really amazing tarot readings on the side. So it's kind of, yeah, it's very curious how it gets incorporated like this.
Yeah, that's so cool. And same with that pickup from Annie's work in Candos and the Ralston reader. Brilliant. Now, Heather, you've been very patient. Would you like to share your question?
Yes. Did you see the aurora last night?
I did. It was,
what colors
it was really
did you
amazing.
Get? What colors did you get?
Mainly pink, like pink and purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I think we were very lucky. Like they said, it's extremely clear sky. You know, the cosmic alignment was welcoming us.
Yeah. Well, you went up there to study. That's interesting that you went up there to look at space weather, and then there was a G4 geomagnetic storm. So that's pretty funny.
A coronal mass ejection, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're still
storm.
they're still saying it might go up to severe G4 tonight. It's been at G3 so far. So tonight might be even more exciting. But I was also wondering. Oh, yeah.
Go on.
I was wondering,
you go.
When do we draw a card?
Oh, yeah, we can draw one in a moment. But just to add as well, I'm not. We're here sort of because Astrida. I'm just in Warren Bungles with Astrida and an artist also from Canada, Nina Furman, and kind of just because the two of them looked at where this project was happening in Armidale and were like, what's around there that's kind of interesting geologically, meteorologically, and just said we're going to go do this as part of a little extension. So I'm quite lucky. So I thought we could do just pulling a card based on the actual moon phase this time. So the beginning of the retreat, it was a full moon, and we all went out to this dam and we did some reading kind of experiments, like just reading from a reader that Astrida had prepared. And so that was Thursday. So if I count days from there on my index, we should today be at number 22, this many days away from the full moon. And this one is Especially Anything is the title. And yeah, so I'll just find that specific card. Okay, so it's this one on that side. Really. Anyway. And then this is the poem, and I'll read the poem. Barren phase continues, guilt, lightness, cauliflower stalks, surrender mowing the lawn, especially anything that's been weighing on rosemary stems, and cluster, waving spring onions are served well by this breakdown.
It sounds like a recipe.
And we can also have, well, yeah, I can also tell you the ingredients from that day's compost, which some of these you can probably tell. Black tea, leek leaves, cauliflower stalks, onion skins, chives, potato skins, garlic skins, and rosemary stems. So you can sort of, that's in this part, you can, and then sometimes you can look again at the card and you can see, oh, you know, and kind of find some of those. So then they're not giving you like they're not giving you guidance like on a plate in terms of like how you might interpret it. You would need to do a little bit of associative work to get from that to something that might help orient you.
Yeah, it's quite.
I mean, it was nice to see that. No, say it again.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, it's quite non-prescriptive as a deck. But that was really interesting, just seeing you read from it right now and reading out the kind of little poem. But I was wondering as well, I mean, I kind of was also thinking a lot about time and lunar cycles and the slowness of your work with Susie. But I wondered if you had any interactions with people who have been using your deck in different ways, or conversations that you've had around the deck.
Well, I mean, not so many people have it yet.
Yeah, it's soon to be launched. So
yeah, I mean, we are planning to launch it at Frontyard, sometimes in the next few months. We just want to get us, because we've kind of been making them and then people have been buying them as we make them. And so we've probably made so far and kind of put into the world about 20. And it's an edition of 80. So, we're hoping to get a kind of stack, because each one also is a slightly different color in the cover, and we want to get a little pile of gradations. Yeah, but yeah, I was going to say it was nice to see this slide with Denisa and Valentina.
Yes.
Valentina Desideri, because I've done a bit of study over the years with them in France, and I think I really took on board from the very beginning with these kind of study groups that have gathered around them. Tarot and various kinds of tools like this as being just a method for accessing knowledge that you already have. So that is kind of how I understand these tools. It's just a way to draw out what might not be visible. Visible knowledge, and
so this is, I mean, for everybody else, this is Valentina Ferreira da Silva and Valentina Desideri. So they do these kind of poethical readings. So not just with tarot, but with astrology, Reiki, palmistry. Yeah, go on, Tessa.
Oh no, I don't. Not. It's a different. I have a different point. Probably go take it in a different direction. There was one. Yeah, you said something about the in-placed knowledge, which is something that I think about a lot, because I am working in different places, although I try to mostly go back to places that I already have a kind of relationship with. But one thing I did not so long ago, and Heather was also there in Bali at this Dynacon gathering, Digital Naturalisms, gathering of sort of hacker ecologist people. And what I ended up making there was a coral oracle, and it was two pieces of coral that you shake, and on the basis of that you're given direction to where in this little book to read, and where the book is made up of pieces of knowledge or wisdom or advice or something that have come from kind of double meaning sayings in this local area, or different pieces of knowledge that have related to the coral or to the relationships with the sea there. And I haven't got it with me, it's a bit annoying, but I have been carrying it around. And I was in Finland in the Arctic for a couple of months in between that and now, and I was carrying around this little coral oracle just out of curiosity to see, like, what does it mean to take this knowledge that is so based in this particular place and then activate it somewhere very, very different. And it has been quite interesting. And when we were doing it there, like on the actual ground, it was funny because a lot of the people who had helped me put it together, when they all came and used it, it was like some of them, the first questions they're saying was like, when am I going to be rich? And, when am I going to have 3 wives? And all these like kind of typical questions, and I was saying all this thing can give you is like some general kind of direction. It's not going to tell you anything about the future. It's not going to predict anything. It's not going to discover, like, by any sort of magic, something that is not knowable. It's just a tool to help you orient, and together we can work with whatever it offers to find an interpretation that makes something visible to you that is not otherwise accessible.
Yeah, totally. Now that's fascinating to hear about, taking the coral oracle to a different part, like a very different part of the world. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think as well, it's like, what you're doing is facilitating a different interpretive process, that might, refresh your thinking or push your thinking into a different direction, or a direction that you haven't been going in, or you've been ignoring, or as you say, bringing something to the surface that hasn't been visible. And
actually one of the exercises that is in this How to Weather Together book, if I have it due, it's, anyway, I can't find it here, but it's called, it's close. So it's close meteorology, and it's kind of based on close reading practices in literature, I guess. But for this exercise, which we're actually planning to do tonight, the three of us that are here, is you move around the space. We've done this with some workshops at Frontyard actually not so long ago, and you try to find the marks of weathering in the space, different bodies, how they've weathered, what they've weathered, and you make notes on your page, and then you use what we call a weather transversal. So some kind of way of sort of randomly moving through that data. So it can be dropping some water on it. It can be putting it in something that has shade and then following the line of that shade, and then using the words that it crosses over on your notes to make a poem or make some kind of response. So that's just another kind of funny way of making, as you're explaining, this sort of irrational connections across, which somehow do draw out some kind of truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So what is a wet weather transversal? Is that the method?
A weather transversal is one of the, so it's got this exercise, as we've explained, it has 4 steps. One is the close reading the room. Then there's the weather transversal, then there's poem generator, and then you can develop it into part 4, which is a collective weathering report. So everyone who is participating in that process can put what they made together. But yeah, it's a transversal. It's just borrowed from, I guess, mathematics. It's like a way of cutting across without, I suppose, thinking about it too much, just getting in there and seeing what happens when you throw that invitation into the matter.
Yeah, beautiful. Sorry, Deborah, did you have a question?
Yeah, yes, I do. So I really enjoy hearing about your work, Tessa, and I'm writing a book at the moment about future thinking. It's called Living Futures, and there's a chapter on history of what I call lay futuring practices. And I've been reading about almanacs, and when you're talking about your work, it really, and almanacs as they were used in the medieval and early modern period in Europe. And it really, your tarot cards and some of the other creative practices you're talking about really reminded me of almanacs. And I've been thinking about a way of using that concept of the almanac as a creative research method tool. And I was just wondering if that's something, have you sort of engaged with that concept of the almanac at all in your work?
No, I haven't. That sounds really fascinating. Thank you. I mean, I have engaged with encyclopedias. I did a project in China once, in Beijing, for half a year looking at extinctions, and I was also in that work working with local kind of histories of encyclopedias and sort of semi-fictional encyclopedias. no. But yeah, I mean, that is something that is very present in what I'm doing generally. I do teach sometimes in design featuring at UTS, and the Amateur Lichenologists Society that Annie mentioned, which is a project that has been going for the last 7 or 8 years with myself and Sumugin Sivanasan. That has been quite interesting because we work with a really specific future period, so it's 68 years in the future. Every year that changes, obviously, slightly. But yeah, the reason that I was in Finland and working with Sumu, we were looking at this particular area and talking to scientists who work in that really specific place about, to help us create a kind of picture of that future time, which incorporates both climate related issues that a lot of, depending what area of science they might be working in, people are like specifically concerned about, but then also thinking, giving people a space to think about how they would wish that people organize in response to that, what they might hope to see happening in terms of how we relate to other people and to other beings and to, other worlds that we're kind of co-creating in these difficult conditions. So yeah, kind of that balance between engaging with where things are realistically going, but then not getting stuck in dystopian sort of processes or being kind of blocked by getting depressed. But sorry, I don't know if that was an answer, but
have you done workshops with people sort of develop? I mean, they won't be obviously as artistically amazing as your tarot cards that you've just been talking about, but do you do work with people, encouraging them to make their own similar tarot cards at all, involving imagery and the sort of poetic representations that you've included on your tarot cards?
Well, they're not actually tarot cards. Like they don't really have a relationship with the tarot. Yeah.
Okay, so what would you call them? What do you call them? How do you characterize them?
I've called them like compost cards or a transmutation deck. Yeah, but they are a kind of oracle card, I suppose, and the coral oracle similarly, it's.
And do you
I guess that's. Sorry.
I was just just getting back to, have you ever sort of worked with people to develop their own cards similar to whatever you'd like to call compost cards, as well, as part of a kind of Sorry.
I think because this is kind of it's quite a newish thing for me. It's not something I've really done before. So no, I haven't done. Most of my projects involve some level of participation or workshop components, and so certainly like with the Lichen Society, we do a lot of workshops also within the frame of the society. So if the workshop happens, the society presents the workshop, then the workshop is happening. If it's this year, it's happening in 2093. So you come into the space and it's kind of performative workshop. But like a couple of years ago, we did a project in Kelowna, also with a streeter in British Columbia, and it was a love poetry workshop. So people were coming in and writing love poems to lichens in this world where people have a much closer relationship with other beings, particularly lichens. And we had actually some really interesting poets, and we were working with a particular poetry form, the Tanka, as a kind of love poem form, and we collected together collaborative poems as well, which can be turned into publications. And so I've done, and I guess with the Weathering Collective, we've done a lot of also collaborative like speed zining type activities, or things that allow people to work into each other's work and kind of create together something that expresses what the group is doing. Yeah, but no, cards for me are very recent, so I haven't run anything like that.
Well, I'd love to get my hands on that new publication that you've just got that fold out thing that you've been showing us. If how do we get our hands on it, on a copy?
Unfortunately, there's only 24 copies of that. But yeah, our website is like many years out of date, but we will be updating soon, and we will also be making a Rezo version, which is like in greater numbers than 24. So yeah, you can buy the actual book being published by Bloomsbury, or you can buy this little extracted bad press edition, or you can buy the Rezo.
And when is the book coming out, Tessa?
Well, it was supposed to be out now. This is why we organised the exhibition and why Street has come out from Canada and all the rest of it. But, with these publishers, there's delays sometimes. And so apparently it is going to be out before the exhibition ends.
Okay.
So within the next 3 months. Yeah.
Okay.
And we probably will do a version of this exhibition in Sydney, maybe the year after, maybe in 2027. And then there's also a possibility for the current exhibition the exhibition in its current form to tour. So the gallery there is quite keen to set up some kind of touring component of it, which would also incorporate weathering workshops that we do, and yeah, like more than just the physical space.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I'll put the website here, even though it's very, very out of date. But oh yeah, thank you for the.
Oh, we've got a question in the chat. Elaine, would you okay if I read yours out? Elaine says, wonderful to hear about what you've been doing, Anastasia and Tess. Thank you. I wonder if you could say a little more about your observation of how people from other cultures engage with tarot culture, which is Eurocentric, as you mentioned. Perhaps that's a bit more for you, Annie.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wouldn't say tarot as a whole is Eurocentric. I think some decks, like the Rider-Waite-Smith, are Eurocentric. And I mean, there's a bit we could sort of get into around like Hermeticism and, like basically these kind of magical cultures that were really kind of unfolding in the kind of late 18th and early 19th centuries. So, but, I think magic and tarot cultures, as I said, are, increasingly kind of hybridized and adapted. I mean, the other kind of interesting thing for me has been, going to Candos and talking about tarot with different people. And, I gave a version of this talk at the Way Out Art Space in June. And, I mean, one of the Indigenous elders there was also really quite interested in it, and he's kind of done some work with like the Dowsers, the New South Wales water diviners. So, as you kind of, I think, get deeper into it, you kind of see how these magical practices can sort of move across different cultures. So it doesn't necessarily say siloed within a kind of Eurocentrism. So I am a bit cautious of constructing binaries, I suppose, or saying, okay, well, this type of tarot is irredeemably Eurocentric, and these other tarot decks are kind of decolonized. I mean, there's lots of kind of tarot decks that try to, I guess, update these archetypes. I mean, I showed those examples of the Christie C. Road Next World Tarot, which are a bit more kind of activisty. But, and, I think it really kind of comes down to how you practice the tarot. But, it's also something I'm another person that comes to mind is S.J. Norman, who's an artist, and he's also very knowledgeable about the tarot, but also about esoteric Christianity. So you do kind of have people from other cultures, be they sort of Indigenous cultures, who are sort of, nonetheless engaging with the tarot and are kind of doing different things with it. But for me personally, it's also something I am working through, I think, and it's why I'm also thinking about how to hack it or modify it, or, you know, whether I should be doing that. I mean, there's something I think that's not, I am a kind of little bit less interested in making a tarot deck, just because I feel like there's already so many out there, and I'm more interested in the practice and the method of how to do it. So yeah, I mean, that was a little bit of a rambling answer for me, but yeah, I mean, just to say that, you know, tarot as a kind of method of knowledge production, I think does move across cultures. Like, it doesn't necessarily stay within this kind of Eurocentric zone, if you like.
Elaine, thank you for your comment back. Says makes good sense. Thanks. Well, yes, we do see it's moving to different cultures, and there's background noise, so they can't turn their mic on. Thank you, Annie. And I'm so glad you mentioned S.J. Norman, amazing artist. I've put their link there as well in case anybody isn't familiar with their performance practice and curating work and author, everything incredible. We have a couple of minutes to go. We could also wrap up now, but are there any last questions or any last, you know, burning thoughts that people might have you want to share about tarot, or about the beautiful deck that Tessa shared, or about the weathering practices? Otherwise, we could give everybody a little early mark and we could say thank you so much, Tessa, for joining us. Shari's just writing something. I'll just check if they want to share something to ask.
I might just take a moment to thank Tessa for joining us. Like, it's been such a treat to learn about your composting deck, but also all of the other wonderful things that you're doing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to engaging with more of your work, hopefully in person as well as, you know, online and wherever.
Yeah, thank you at Frontyard, and thank you also for talking about the Samantha project. I'm excited. I haven't been to Samantha since I think the second one, so I'd really love to come. Sounds like a great initiative.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, everyone should come. It's next September, so yeah, it's really a very great, interesting, exciting festival, I think. Yeah.
Really is. Really.
No, I hope what I said, I hope things that I was saying made sense, because I'm quite very tired. We were up till like 3 a.m. wandering around there.
It all made perfect sense. Thank you, Tessa.
The stars.
And fingers crossed, yeah, fingers crossed for another exciting night in the, you know, the park. Hope you see some.
Well, we're going to be doing
cool
meteorology tonight.
Yeah.
I just got a final comment. I've just got a final comment, Tessa. When you were introducing and talking about what you were doing last night, I've just finished reading The Lieutenant by Kate Grenville, which is about the first astronomer in the settler colony in Botany Bay, or Sydney Harbour, as it ended up being in. I don't know if you've read it, but yeah, it's.
I haven't read it, but when you raise that, that does make me think of the amazing Ross Gibson's book 26 Views of the Starburst World, which was also about doors, and is just one of the most incredible books that I've read. It's so beautiful. Yeah, just looking at language and how the language of this place reflects the place and the kind of the beingness that is specific. And actually I did a project with Jennifer Hamilton before we were even Weathering Collective about William Dawes, like I think it was like 2013 or something. So yeah, nice little connection. I haven't read that exact book, but oh yeah, someone's popped in the link to that.
Ross Gibson was an ex-colleague of mine at University of Canberra. We were both there together, you know, of course, sadly before he died. He's lovely. He was a lovely man, lovely colleague. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him. Well, on that note, but anyway, so but thanks very much, and I really enjoyed hearing about your work, Tessa, and learning more about my colleague Annie's work.
Yeah, and thanks everyone. Thank you for your presence and questions, and a really nice discussion. And
yeah, it was a pleasure. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all so much. And I'm sorry we didn't get to your question, Tua, but maybe we can get to it in our next salon, which is March 12, I think, off the top of my head, but mid-March anyway. So you've got a little bit of a break now. But thank you again, everybody, and especially Tessa for joining us from the Warren Bungles. Take care. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm going to stop.
Yeah, I'm just trying to stop the recording. Stop recording.